Hi everybody. Today we spent most of our time in class making sure we had a good handle on several definitions that you can see on this slide and equations to make sure we understood how certain definitions were derived. We then took a look at several different graphs and made sure we understood the numbers behind those graphs and how each of those graphs is derived. And you can see here quickly as I click through, just stop if you need a quick refresher on each of these. We looked at spreading effect, we looked at the diminishing returns effect and defined what both of those are. We also took a look at how average total cost is made up of average variable cost and average fixed cost. And then we talked about why both the marginal cost and the average variable cost curves slope upward. We also took a look at the relationship between marginal cost and average total cost and discussed how when marginal cost is below average total cost, that means the average total cost is still falling, and how when marginal cost is above average total cost, that means the average total cost ought to be going up. We also hinted a little bit at the significance of this point where the marginal cost and average total cost intersect. Tonight, one of the things we're going to talk about is the fact that that point of intersection is basically a principle. It's a principle called the minimum cost output. And that minimum cost output happens when marginal cost and average total cost, when those two curves intersect. We also looked at the relationship between marginal cost, average total cost, and average variable cost. And you'll notice again, just like this curve, where marginal cost and average total cost intersect, we also have an intersection of marginal cost and average total cost here. We talked a little bit about specialization. So when you go from 1 employee to 2 employees to 3 employees and so on, you'll get increased specialization and a decrease in your marginal cost, so the cost of one additional unit of output, but eventually diminishing return sets in and the marginal cost curve swoops up again. Now let's talk about the importance of the intersection of several of these lines. First of all, we're going to jump here a little bit and I'm going to foreshadow a little. We're going to talk about the intersection of marginal cost and marginal revenue. This, you may recognize, is a slide straight out of our profit maximizing module, which we did 4 or 5 days ago. We said that a profit maximizing firm is going to produce up to a point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Marginal revenue in this case equals price, and I noted down here marginal revenue won't always be straight. What I'll tell you now is that marginal revenue like this is going to be flat in a perfectly competitive market. You don't need to know that for tonight necessarily, other than to understand and remind yourself that the marginal revenue curve won't always be flat. In monopoly, it's going to look like this. In oligopoly, it'll look even different. But keep in mind, again, just as a reminder, a firm that wants to maximize profit is going to produce at the point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Now, let's keep moving with that idea. We have here marginal cost, marginal revenue, and average total cost. Let's see what's going on here in terms of production points. Well, first of all, we know, a reminder, as per the last slide, a firm will always produce up to the point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Okay? Marginal cost, marginal revenue. Here it's a perfectly competitive firm. So we know that marginal revenue is going to equal the price. And they're going to want to produce here where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. We also know, based on 3 slides ago, that marginal cost always crosses average total cost at the minimum point of the average total cost curve. So the minimum cost production point or minimum average total cost. Interesting how these 3 curves just happen to intersect. They are intersecting at this point because this particular firm has moved its point of output to bring the 3 together, so they are not only maximizing their profit, but they're also operating at a point where they can stay in business, and stay in business because they're operating at the minimum point of their average total cost curve. So when we bring all this together, We have total costs that we remember how to graph. That is the cost of producing each incremental amount, but that cost being summed up. So you can see here points on the graph, quantity of labor, quantity of wheat, variable plus fixed for total cost. We then have here the comparison of the total cost curve and marginal cost being the incremental cost of each unit produced. We have here the average total cost. Average total cost is total cost divided by the number of units produced. We then took a look at the relationship between the average total cost, which we just derived, the average variable cost, average fixed cost, and the marginal cost curve, and discussed why we have these curves and why these two curves actually are sloping upward. We talked about the principle that says at the minimum cost output, marginal cost is going to equal average total cost, and discussed why this becomes a point of significant interest for us. We also looked at marginal cost and average total cost and the importance of this point of intersection as shown here. We then reminded ourselves of the profit maximizing output point, which is where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. In this case, a perfectly competitive firm. And we also looked at how a firm wants to produce at the point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, but also at the point of lowest average total cost. Okay, that's it for tonight. Have a great evening, and we'll go over this again in class tomorrow.